Welcome to the latest edition of The Audible presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Bruce Feldman, joined as always by my colleagues from The Athletic, Ralph Russo and Stuart Mandel. Good show today, but first, don't forget every episode of The Audible is on YouTube now. Find us at youtube.com/@audibleshow. You can join us live on Sunday mornings at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, as we break down everything from the weekend's games. Later, we're going to pick our upsets as well as the biggest games of this weekend. We will have to get into Ralph stirring up his own controversy on the AP poll this week, Ralph. And we got some big news that actually came out of our live stream after we closed the show Sunday morning. That was coming out of UCLA as well as out of Virginia Tech. Guys, let's start with that. No shocks given that both programs were embarrassed this weekend. Where do you guys want to start, UCLA or Virginia Tech?
Well, you guys both sort of wrote the obits on both of those schools on Sunday after their terrible losses. So we're going to try to spin this ahead. I'd say I find UCLA to be a little more interesting because of their move to the Big Ten. It was supposed to refresh the financial coffers, and I think eventually it will because they just haven't been there long enough. But it's been such an odd shift for that program into this almost like space of irrelevance. It really shouldn't be that way at UCLA. There's always going to be a tension for schools in pro towns to grab the attention of fans. Even USC has that problem sometimes. It's always that way. But it just feels like UCLA has gotten to a point where UCLA should never be. And that is, again, this feeling, Stu, of like, are you even relevant at all other than the fact that you happen to be in a good market?
Well, when you think about it, it wasn't that long ago. Jim Mora was the coach. Josh Rosen was their quarterback. They may have underperformed a little bit, but they weren't bad. And they were definitely relevant nationally. I feel like people talked about that program first with Brett Hundley, then with Josh Rosen.
That actually was pretty long ago, though. That was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, but it's not one of these programs that's been, out in the wilderness for 20 years. That being said, I feel like they're very out in the wilderness right now. I think the erosion began under Chip Kelly. He didn't really do anything to generate excitement for that program. Then he leaves. Some people say it was kind of a panic hire to move Deshaun Foster up. And clearly it turns out he wasn't ready for that job. But as I said on Twitter, guys, it's not just the head coach. I mean, this is a more deep-rooted problem that you could kind of see, frankly, coming for several years. They were not prepared for the Big Ten. As Ralph alluded to, they've run like a $200 million athletic department deficit over the last 6 years. The university has been bailing them out, but now that was before rev share. And then I think more relevant, like they just had NIL became a thing. Some schools embraced it quicker than others. They were definitely on the slow end. I guess somebody found the money for Nico, but in general, and Bruce can attest to this a little bit,
they didn't find that much money. They don't
have that support.
Yeah, and they didn't find that much money for Nico, right? So a lot of schools are paying, $1 to $2 million for quarterbacks. That was in the ballpark of what they spent for Nico. I know this, and just having talked to a lot of people who work inside UCLA football over the years, Laiatu Latu is probably the best player UCLA's had in the last decade. He got almost no money in NIL. Everything I've heard was there just isn't people who are coming in to give UCLA football money. It was not substantial. They spent a bunch of money trying to offer Dante Moore to come in there, and there wasn't much more beyond that from what I've heard from multiple sources. I think people can talk about there's been so much money when, and I said this the other day, I really like Deshaun. I've known him for a while. Think he's a good man. He cares about UCLA, but I think people thought when Martin Jarman, the AD, made the announcement, it was a cool moment when they announced him. He clearly wanted to be there, wanted the job. It's important to him. But it wasn't like all of a sudden they turned into Texas Tech with people were throwing money in left and right. That wasn't the reality of what happened. And so for people who think there's all this money and all this interest in there, there's not. I mean, you have a lot of things that are, in line here. First of all, they play at a stadium that's can be almost an hour a drive away from their campus. That is not ideal. It's a gorgeous stadium. We all love the venue, but we love it on January 1st. We're not going out there any other time, right? And I think beyond that, it's challenging because they moved into the Big Ten, and Stu and I talked about this the other day. They moved in because USC was leaving. I think on top of it, now you have an AD in Martin Jarman, who I don't know, there's a lot of friction around that and how he's going to make the next hire. We'll see. I mean, I did a search story where there was a bunch of people who I think would be interested in the job. Now, I know from my sources that powerful people at UCLA would really be interested in Danton Lynn, who spent 1 year on the Kelly staff, did really well, impressed people there, and then left for a lot of money to go cross town to USC. He really likes Los Angeles. His wife is from here. And on some sense, I could see him being tempted by the job to be a first-time head coach. He's the second highest paid assistant coach in the country at USC. There's another name that I've heard is very interested in the job. It's a name that we all know well, and that is Pat Fitzgerald, the former Northwestern head coach who just got a big settlement from Northwestern. He's obviously worked at a high academic school and in a relatively big city and big market. He was also 4-20 in his last 2 years there at a place he knows.
Before we even get into specific jobs, is Pat Fitzgerald, I'm curious your guys' opinion, is Pat Fitzgerald a desirable Power 4 head coaching candidate? Because even if you just accept that he was vindicated in the hazing scandal, let's just put that to the side. And he had a losing record 3 of his last 4 years there. He went 1-11 his last season. When I hear people, I think he had a great run there. He deserves accolades for the run he had, but the way it ended, and he was one of these guys who was very stubborn about embracing, current new college football. Would a school like UCLA consider that to be a good hire?
So just in general, I think there is a desire nowadays to find somebody who has been a head coach and has a little bit of experience with running the big show. Mm-hmm. Not throughout all of college football. There will be assistants and first-time head coaches hired during this cycle. But I could see at a time of great uncertainty, as we're morphing into a new type of college football, for some ADs to say, you know what, kind of could use somebody who's been in this chair before and has some relevant experience, as opposed to now relevant experience can be this guy was a coordinator and an active coordinator. In other words, a powerful coordinator who had a lot of operational access at a Power 4 school. That could also translate to experience. But I think one of the reasons why a guy like Fitzgerald could be desirable beyond his record is just simply saying, we've seen him do well at places that are hard to do well. He's been in the chair. This lowers, I don't have to teach my head coach to be a head coach, right? I can bring in somebody who I don't have to worry about growing into the job. So that's why I think, Fitzgerald will probably get some looks this cycle.
Can I give you a possible scenario that I've heard from some people inside the business and industry sources are, there's a chance, Luke Fickell, who did a terrific job at Cincinnati, he's struggling at Wisconsin. If Cincinnati were to come open, could he go back there? And then I would think Pat Fitzgerald would look like a much better fit at Wisconsin than he probably would at UCLA. I don't want to shove Scott Satterfield out the door yet, and I certainly don't want to shove Luke Fickell out somewhere where maybe he doesn't want to go back to. But if he does, could you guys see Fitz as a better fit back in the Big Ten at Wisconsin? Not, drivable from, Chicagoland and all that he's very been comfortable in, as opposed to him out in Los Angeles here.
Yeah, I can envision that a lot more than I can envision him in Los Angeles. I mean, he's South Side Chicago. He's never really worked outside of that area. I think he was at Maryland as an assistant for 1 year. Other than that, he's been in that part of the country. So yeah, yes. My answer is yes. That would make a lot more sense.
Not to veer too far away from UCLA, though, if the Wisconsin job opens up, I think Lance Leipold might be the first call there, right? I haven't quite. Now, I will say this. I'm getting ahead of my own reporting here. I haven't quite gauged what exactly that relationship is and the feeling about Leipold. I mean, obviously, he created a Division III powerhouse, so he has ties to that state. And you'd think that there would be people who think highly of him in that state, and that would be an interesting lure for him. Again, we're sort of drifting away from UCLA here, so I'll pivot back to UCLA. But I just think that, like, if we're going to talk Wisconsin, we have to sort of insert that name there. Just to get back to UCLA, though, they've also, as you mentioned, Bruce, they face some just interesting. When I say cultural issues to a certain degree, you talk about the stadium being so far away from campus, having a hard time engaging with your own fans to a certain degree, engaging with your donors in a way that makes them feel comfortable giving and having players paid is what he was trying to say there. So was a bit of an issue at a lot of schools. Hey, like we're paying players now. Like, you have to be comfortable with that, folks. A lot of schools had that issue. So engaging the donor base there to give is tricky at times. Like, just getting them to give to athletics can be tricky at times. And then getting them to give in a way where the school or a collective can activate it to steer it to the players has also been challenging for UCLA. There's just a lot of things that need to be fixed in the way UCLA seems to run its athletic department.
Source I know around UCLA made an interesting point, and this is a name we've talked a little bit about on this podcast. The guy who basically shoved Deshaun Foster out the door, Jason Eck, they were a 15 or 16 point underdog, New Mexico, and then ran all over them. And this person made a bunch of good points. He was like, the place he just got to was basically rated in the and the transfer portal. He lost a lot of really good players of whatever they had. Either went to Utah and Devin Dampier. Luke Weissing's a really good receiver. Went to Arizona. He showed he could win at Idaho when he was losing his best players. And this person was like, look, at UCLA, I think you have to be better at scheme, and you got to be better with strategy, and you also got to get people excited. This guy clearly is really good at scheme. He was a former offensive coordinator at South Dakota State. He's got a big, fun personality. He will throw trick plays in. You could see what he did when they gave Michigan a good game in the opener, and he had some wrinkles for them. Again, he's another Chicago guy who was originally, a Wisconsin offensive lineman. But I would not be surprised if UCLA looked closer at him after what they saw from him, like, this could be interesting or whatever. Because again, I don't know how deep the pool UCLA is going to have. I know some of our audience is going to be like, hey, Virginia Tech is a pretty sizable job that came open too. Maybe we should pivot to Blacksburg for a bit and kind of lean into that for a second.
Can I just wrap a bow on UCLA real quick and just say they could, whatever they could get the biggest coach in the world. They could lure Nick Saban out of retirement. It wouldn't matter if they're not willing to invest. I mean, in this day and age, you got to have full on commitment to football. When NIL Go inevitably gets ruled an antitrust violation, and whether that's a month or a year from now, you've got to have boosters ready to it doesn't have to be Cody Campbell, but they have to be able to raise funds and you can't be getting outspent by Duke in football. So to me, that'll just continue to be the thing that hangs over that coaching search. All right,
like there's not rich people who went to UCLA, right? I mean,
yeah, they just don't care about football right now.
Right now,
in fairness, they haven't had a reason to be excited about football. If you can hire somebody who will get everybody excited, that's a different story. All right, who wants to take Virginia Tech, Bruce?
I think there's some good group of 5 guys in the mix. Let's take out the 2 biggest names that are going to be attached to the job. One's obviously Shane Beamer, whose dad was a great coach there. The other one's Michael Vick, who's the greatest player they've ever had, but is 1-2 in his first 2 games. It feels like way too early to think, okay, Michael Vick's going to jump in there and have it all figured out. Shane Beamer, my gut is he will not want to leave. He's got a really good job. His family really loves it in Columbia. I remember hearing he did, not that he didn't want to be known as Frank's son, but you go back there, you're always going to be known as Frank's son, right? So unless you guys feel otherwise, let's put that away. I'm going to go, though, the group of 5 names, and I'm going to bounce them off you and Ralph. If you have somebody else, you're like, oh, this is a better one than that. So I think there's a pretty good pool here. So I'm going to start Charles Huff, won 10 games at Marshall, bounced to Southern Miss, is already off to a nice start there. But he is a DMV guy who went to college in Virginia. He's very well regarded. I could see him getting some traction there. Bob Chesney is in the state right now at JMU, really good coach, has won a lot of games, been a coach for a long time at lower levels. I had heard if Virginia was coming open, he was a guy to watch there, but it's in the state. I know they're really different kind of profile schools, but another one, got Ryan Silverfield at Memphis. He's like 25-6 and they're 26-5 in the last 3 years at Memphis. Done a really good job. He actually went to college in the state of Virginia. And then the 4th name is Alex Golish, who had the fastest start of anybody this year. Blew out Boise, upset Florida, and then obviously lost pretty big this weekend to Miami. But I feel like he and Silverfield for sure are guys I think will get bigger jobs and probably this off season. I don't know that for sure because it depends on fit. But are those the 4 you think would be if you're a Virginia Tech brass, you're like, okay, this is what we're sorting out? Or are there other names that you would be buying here, Ralph?
So I got another one to throw in there, which is also falls into the Fitz category of experienced coach on the sidelines who could be hired sooner rather than later, which is also not a bad deal. Dave Clawson, who was just in the ACC. And again, I think his name will probably come up around the quote unquote smart schools, right? Now, Virginia might not come open. Frankly, like Tony Elliott's got an amazing offense there. Now, defense has got a problem, but the offense is cranking and their schedule is pretty reasonable. So, we're all kind of rooting for Tony because he's been through some bad stuff and he's generally a good person. So it'd be nice if he can manage to get through there, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think, frankly, when the thing was open before at Virginia Tech, they might have knocked on Clawson's door, but things were going a little better at Wake Forest back then. So I think he would be an interesting one to keep in mind. There's going to be so many moving parts, I think, possibly this cycle. So where these dominoes fall are really interesting. I will say this, going back to my point earlier about, hey, we'd like somebody who's done this job before on some level. I do wonder if the experience they just had with Brent Pry, who had never been a head coach before, means they are more likely, whether it's a G5, again, maybe a high-level G5, or somebody else with some head coaching experience, probably, Stu, becomes a priority for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I think you got to do that because it's going to be a massive rebuild. I always love the FCS guys moving up, so Bob Chesney makes sense. Ryan Silverfield is a name that, frankly, I've been surprised he hasn't gotten that call yet, that he hasn't moved up. And now, how this stuff is very short memory, so it kind of might depend on how he does this year. We haven't really talked much at all about Memphis yet because of Tulane and USF obviously getting the attention in that conference, but he has won double-digit games each of the last 2 years. Let me ask you guys a quick bigger picture question. Where, if you put the same coach at both schools, who has more potential over the next 5 years, UCLA or Virginia Tech?
Ooh.
I don't think you can put the same.
Bruce.
Yeah, I don't think you can put the same coach. To me, they're really different jobs.
Which one will be easier to win at?
Let Bruce answer that, and I will answer more directly, because I think where Bruce is going is pretty interesting, but I will answer your question more directly.
Stu, your last question was this: which one has a better chance of being successful?
Yeah, which program? Let's just say this: which program's the better job?
Again, it depends on who you are. Like, there's going to be a lot of coaches who are like, it's really expensive to live in Los Angeles. I can remember this a long time ago. Coach was one of the hotter coaches, probably the hottest coach in what would have been the group of five. And I remember getting a phone call because a lot of people in college football know I live in Los Angeles. And he started saying, how much is it going to cost? My special teams coordinator makes X. And we went through this, and it ain't gotten any cheaper to live out here. Now, I love it out here. Most people I know who live out here, they love it out here. But it's not cheap. And UCLA typically, I'm not talking about the head coach, but I'm talking about for staff, does not pay as well, anywhere near as well as USC does. So that presents some challenges. Now, I know this is another conversation, but I know this from, I have a coaching buddy who I've known for a long time. He is a Texas guy through and through. I was always like, when he got a job here, now it was at USC, but when he got a job here, I remember thinking, and me and a couple other people who know him were like, this is going to be interesting to him in Los Angeles. Well, it turned out this guy loved Los Angeles. And once he got here, he was like, this is awesome, right? But I think the perception was different. Having said all that, I think it is probably easier to find a good fit, even, whatever's happened in the last 10 years in Blacksburg. I think it's easier to find a good fit in Virginia Tech, especially because you have those guys where I think it's a very specific set of skills that you probably need. And you also need the buy-in. I don't think I worry about the buy-in in Blacksburg as much as I would worry about it out here. It's just, there's a lot of challenges. And I also think you're punching up. There's way more haves than have-nots when you're in a conference with Ohio State, which is a gold standard program. You got Oregon there, which is right now, in a real sweet spot with Dan Lanning and everything else they're doing. You got Penn State, which is pretty similar, I think, to Ohio State, to be honest. Then you got Michigan that's just won a national title. And that doesn't include like the other programs who, like, Washington has been really good. USC has been really good. It's just like, there's a lot more than just like, oh, Clemson's in there, and can Miami and Florida State get right? You know what I mean? So that's why I would say Virginia Tech.
So Bruce sort of just took it where I was going to take it, which is, this is sort of the existential question in college sports right now. Do you need to be in the Big Ten and the SEC as we head toward whatever is next? There's a lot of uncertainty. I'm not throwing dirt and killing off the ACC, but the fact of the matter is, there's a reason why UCLA joined the Big Ten. Whether it was ready or not, they understood we need to be there. That's where the money is. That's where the future is. We got to get there. And I think a lot of coaches, as they are trying to figure out where their future is, are weighing, similar to what Bruce is talking about. I might have a better chance to win at Virginia Tech, but what am I winning? Like, what am I winning at a place in a conference where I might only be getting 2 playoff bids? There is some more local issues about, can it ever be what it was under Frank Beamer? But I think the greater college football discussion about, is a bottom tier Big Ten job or a back half of the Big Ten, I don't know where you want to put UCLA, let's say lower third of the Big Ten, as good as an upper half of the ACC job? I don't know what that answer is, but more and more, I'm feeling like if you have a chance to get in the Big Ten, you probably need to go to the Big Ten. I don't know if that's a definitive thing, Stu, but I'm feeling like the shift is more and more in that direction.
I mean, I get that thinking, and I think that's probably how most coaches think about it too. But I'd also just be careful about Big Ten or not. I don't want to go somewhere where I'm going to get fired in 4 years because you can't win there. And I think you've got a better chance of winning in the ACC. I mean, to your guys' point about being miscast, like, I think, forget about the money. UCLA is a basketball school trying to compete in a conference full of football crazy schools, right? How many, most of the schools in that conference prioritize football. ACC, not as much, right? Virginia Tech is definitely a football first school. So is Clemson, so is Florida State, so is Miami, but not a lot of other schools, I would say, have big, passionate football fan bases. So if your priority is, and also, by the way, I go to Virginia Tech, win big, and then get hired by a better Big Ten school. So I don't know if that's how coaches think or not. We should take a break. And when we get back, we are going to pulverize Ralph over his AP ballot. All right, real quick, I should mention that Bruce already did stories for The Athletic about who the leading coaching candidates will be for both UCLA and Virginia Tech. So please go on The Athletic and read those. You should also read Ralph's story about how he voted in the AP ballot, which comes complete with a cool, cute little video of him debating his rankings with his dog. I think obviously the hot topic in this week's AP poll was Notre Dame. 0-2 Notre Dame became just the third team to stay ranked in the top 25 at 0-2. I personally would have them ranked, but I definitely was a little surprised, Ralph, that not only do you have them ranked, you have them ranked 15th. Explain yourself.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. I definitely looked for some outside help. Dog didn't give me much, frankly. I mean, she was sitting there watching the whole game. I can't understand why she wasn't a little more helpful. Anyway, here's the thing: we are so early in the season that people are, you gotta rank them based on results and quality and wins, don't they? Like, most of the teams have played one real game. We talked about this last week. We're still 3 weeks in. Most teams have not played one team as good as the two teams that Notre Dame has played. So, I have Utah right behind Notre Dame. I'm really high on Utah this year. I've been ahead of the curve on Utah this year, but not for nothing. The Utes have just pounded terrible teams. I was giving them a little benefit of the doubt for beating UCLA, but now we see UCLA is just awful. So, if you haven't really done much on your resume to say, hey, I have this good win, then for the most part, I thought, okay, what's the line between teams that have a decent win and teams that toward the back of the rankings haven't done a whole lot to necessarily move up? So I thought that Notre Dame's 2 games against Texas A&M and Miami, frankly, guys, those are ties. They played those 2 teams to a virtual standstill. Would I do this in week 10 or week 9? No, probably not. And was it a little aggressive to be at 15? Sure. Do I have any regrets? No regrets, though maybe some second thoughts as I look back on it. But for the most part, I was fine with Notre Dame at 15 because I just thought at this point in the season, what teams have played? Nobody has played 2 teams as good as Notre Dame has played.
Can I say I was a little surprised that you had only Georgia Tech at 20? They beat Clemson, and granted, Clemson's 1-2, but Clemson gave LSU a good game, right? I don't think Clemson belongs in the top 25, but at least Georgia Tech won. They went on the road. Now, Colorado's not great, but they went on the road. They beat them. It wasn't like they played an FCS program. And I give them credit also, the way they beat Clemson, just to be able to pull off that kind of fire drill with 18 seconds left, no timeouts, and then hit a 55-yard field goal to win the game. I think that deserves a lot of credit. And again, you have them in the top 25, but I'm just even Mizzou, I think you have them at 21, or you have one at 21, one at 20. They ended up beating Kansas, who I think is decent. They beat them, it was a pretty good win. But the point is, Notre Dame hasn't started winning yet. So what I would ask you on this is, is this the floor for Notre Dame in your eyes? Meaning they're going to start from 15, and then when they start winning games, they're going to start shoving teams down, and the point is you're going to get them into 10. I'm not saying you're trying to bias the CFP people, but I think for a lot of audience, they're probably going, okay, this is how it happens for Notre Dame. The floor is 15 because Ralph Russo, the Don of the AP Top 25, is all of a sudden saying, here's the floor, and we're going to start moving them up, and that's it.
So I am playing both sides here in terms of my overall Notre Dame analysis, because I had Notre Dame not making the playoff before the season started. So I'm expecting them to take another L here.
No wonder why your dog looks at you so funny, Ralph. He can't figure out which way you're going.
I think you can hold two thoughts at once.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, Moon is a she. You can hold two thoughts at once. So I would say this. I actually tweeted this. I was going back and forth with a couple of fans on X before we started the show. I think I am less likely to push Notre Dame up aggressively at this point over the next few weeks, right? They have Purdue, Boise, Arkansas, or maybe Arkansas, Boise. Arkansas game, by the way, that's a little tricky. That might be a little tricky. At Arkansas, that they can't play much defense, but neither can Notre Dame. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see a similar type of outcome at Arkansas with Notre Dame as you saw with Texas A&M. So I think where I would caution people is, yes, I have maybe, as you said, set a floor for Notre Dame. I think I'm going to be very much less aggressive about pushing them forward and more likely to do what I was also suggesting over on social media is the winner of the Texas Tech Utah game this weekend probably goes ahead of Notre Dame next week. I will probably be more aggressive in popping teams that are behind them, above them, or past them once they have a couple more decent victories and they stay undefeated. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if what you see in a few weeks is Notre Dame keeps winning, but actually loses ground in my ballot.
Yeah, Ralph, I like the way you're thinking. I mean, there are a few teams. I would definitely have Georgia Tech ahead of them. I would definitely have Missouri ahead of them, who beat Kansas, maybe a couple others. But if you're somebody who says they're 0-2, they're out, right? Don't even consider it, even though they lost 2 down to the wire games against good teams. Well, then think about some of the teams you're keeping in. You're keeping in Indiana, who has played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State, right? You're keeping in Texas Tech is kind of like that. You're keeping in Michigan, who I talked about last week, who got hammered in their one meaningful game and then have blown away 2 other teams. Like, what are we doing? Like, we criticize the committee for not taking strength of schedule seriously enough. So we definitely need to do it in the AP poll. We're going to take another break. And when we get back, time to pick some games.
And we're back here on the Audible, sponsored by Trader Joe's. Time to get to the picks. But before we get to the picks, a couple of quick things on Monday is when a lot of coaches have their coaches press conferences. So occasionally you find some interesting little nuggets. Over in Indiana, as you were bashing Indiana's schedule, Stu, in the last segment, I'm sure Coach Siggs was taking notice. He mentioned today that Old Dominion turned out to be pretty good. He said, I told you they were good, right? Old Dominion, the team that just crushed Virginia Tech, because Coach Siggs never passes up an opportunity to take a dig at somebody, someone, and to defend his program. Also notable, after you guys trashed Brian Kelly for his latest...
We mostly defended him.
We defended him.
We mostly defended him.
I know. I know. I was just trying to stir you up, and you did, and I heard it. And generally speaking, I actually sort of agree with you. Like, there was a lot of a press conference protocol, but BK just, I don't know. He's just one of those guys who's has a hard time conveying his emotions in a way that people are gonna embrace. He went out and tried to sort of apologize, lighten up, walk back a little bit, the way he jumped at a reporter over the weekend for asking a question about LSU's offense after they beat Florida by 10. By the way, LSU's offense, not good. Not good. Make note of that going forward as we.
He probably watched the tape and was like, "Ooh, that guy had a point."
Yeah. He probably did at some point go like, "Man, our offense really isn't very good. Really not great." Okay, so
Hey,
we're going to pick games.
while we are there, he did say the next day, or there at this press conference, also Garrett Nussmeier dealing with an injury that he's playing through, and I think once they get to the bye week, he said maybe things will be better. You know, they have a lightweight opponent. I think it's Southeastern Louisiana next, and then they do play Ole Miss, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that.
Okay, so we're going to hit some games, and I just lost my point spreads, so I'm going to have to filibuster.
By the way, what were
here.
your guys' records last week in our first version of this?
I remember my record. I don't know if you put it down because it's funny. I don't gamble on games, but I really like to be right. So I do. It's funny. I don't really care about being wrong because I don't gamble. But it's fun to be right. And I'm pretty sure I was 2-2 last week. Or maybe 2. No, I think it was 2-2. I got wrong Georgia by a half point, and I got wrong LSU by a half point. So I think the part in the way that would be described is a couple of bad beats, I think.
Yeah.
We describe those.
I got LSU right by a half point. So I'll take my 3-1, which included hitting the Georgia Tech over Clemson upset.
Yeah, also had Vandy upset hit. How did your upset? You know what? I feel bad for Bruce because Bruce had the upset.
I know.
Bruce
I turned down the Lobos, and then I went the other way. And by the way, in the game I picked, which was the game that we had at Fox, which was Arizona hosting K-State, the spread had flipped. So it wasn't even an upset anymore when at least I got to Fox.
I will spiritually credit you with landing on the New Mexico upset because of what happened with Arizona and Kansas State. I'm going to grant you going forward that upset pick of New Mexico over UCLA. You were there. You shied away from it, but I'm doing so. I'm encouraging you to be more bold going forward, to follow your heart.
I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to do that.
So we're going to start with Texas Tech at Utah, the big noon game that kicks off at 10 a.m. local time. The Utes are 3.5-point favorites. Ralph, what do you got?
That's a really tough place to play, though. I don't know if that is as tough a place to play at 10 o'clock in the morning.
They're going to be primed up. They're going to be primed up.
Yeah.
That Musk crowd gets into it. It'll be loud. I promise you.
You know, I've been wavering on this because I think I picked Texas Tech to win the Big 12 early in the season, but I also really like Utah. Those are like the two teams that I was going to leaning into. I'm going to just sort of make sure everybody forgets that I had Kansas State ranked in front of both of them. We're not going to talk about that. But I think I'm going to go with Utah here because of the home field advantage. And I really like what I've seen at a Devin Dampier and that Utes offense. What about you, Bruce?
I'm going to go in the same direction with you. I know that Texas Tech spent a lot of money to upgrade their guys in the trenches. Utah is really good in that regard. I like Dampier too. The spread's not that big. I think this is a tough play. Now, Baron Morton in the offense have played much better than I expected. The one thing that is a concern for me is Quentin Joyner, who was the guy they were expecting to be their kind of feature back, a USC transfer. He got hurt a couple of weeks ago. He's out for the season. I know Cam Dickey's played pretty well, but I just think that the challenge of being multidimensional is asking a lot, especially on the road against a really physical team. So give me the Utes too. Stu, are you making it a threesome? I wanted to see what the reaction would be.
Well, I can't wait for that to go viral. Look, Texas Tech spent a lot of money on this team, and in particular, spent a lot of money in the trenches. And so it's interesting, right? Because that's always been Utah's bread and butter. Who's going to win that battle in the trenches? I'm going to go with Kyle Whittingham's boys. Give me Utah, and I will not call it what you called it. I'll just call it a clean sweep. Let's move to, we're going to do 4 of these plus our upset picks. All right. Big game in the Big Ten. Illinois at Indiana. One of our only ranked matchups of the weekend. The Hoosiers are 4.5-point favorites. I have a feeling, actually, I have no idea what you guys are going to do. Let's start with Ralph.
All right. Last time and only time these two schools have played when they were both ranked, and they've met about 70 times, I think it was like 72, 73 times, was 1950. That's the only time they were both ranked. while playing each other. And Illinois won that game, I believe it was 20-0. Indiana was ranked for a week and ended up finishing with 3 wins that season. You know me, I love my power rankings and my metrics and all that stuff. And even though Illinois has gotten off to a really good start, I've been skeptical about them all year because the power ratings are all skeptical and they get outgained by Duke, but yet they somehow still win because they have, they throw the turnover pixie dust onto Darian Mensah and he just hands the ball to them. I just don't know if you can keep getting away with that against Coach Siggs at home. The number's a little higher than I would love at 4.5, but I'm going to lean into Indiana to knock off Brett Bielema's boys in Bloomington. What you got, Bruce?
I am a little concerned now because I see where this one's going too. I'm going to go with you again. I like how Fernando Mendoza is playing. I mean, you can start to see, as Coach Pete and I watched this a bunch in the last couple of weeks. It's like, okay, he is really sharp, and you're kind of seeing why NFL personnel people are very intrigued by him. To me, these teams are kind of similar in this regard. I don't know if there's any wow talent outside, Mendoza. I could see people getting excited about. Luke Altmaier's a really good college quarterback. They each have like a really dynamic edge rusher. Gabe Atkins, I think, is going to be a problem for Indiana. What he can do. But give me Indiana. I just think, to me, this will be a true upset if Illinois beats them. I know they're a top 10 team. The way they blew out Duke was, I don't know. I just felt like it was like tough to get too far behind that. I don't know how impressive. Again, the score was what it was, but I don't know. I'm just feeling more confidence right now in Indiana.
I mean, it makes you wonder, okay, if we all feel this way, we all feel Indiana deserves to be a 4.5-point favorite. Why is Illinois ranked so high? I did watch most of that Duke-Illinois game, and to Ralph's point, I mean, Duke was actually the more efficient team. It was all the turnovers, and in fact,
it was your guys too. It was your guy.
Yeah, Duke's pass rush in the first half. Indiana couldn't Illinois couldn't handle it. So yeah, give me the Hoosiers. And this is turning into a bit of a boring segment because we've all picked the same team in both ones. Let's see if this one will be different. Auburn at Oklahoma. The Sooners, almost a touchdown favorite at 6.5. What you got, Ralph?
All right, I'm going to take some points here, I think. Again, more of a market inefficiency. It doesn't seem like these two teams should be separated by that much. I just feel like I am worried, legit worried about what Jackson Arnold does in the passing game. I know Auburn's got very good receivers, but for the first 3 weeks, they have just been running the ball on people. And Arnold really hasn't looked that great as a passer, despite the fact that you have Coleman and Singleton and all these guys to throw the ball to. So I'm a little worried about that. But I'm just seeing like this as more of a less than a touchdown game. So I'll grab the road. It's a road, right? They're in Norman, right? I'll grab the road underdog here to keep the game close.
Okay, while this doesn't set up the way I want it to set up because of what you just said, Ralph, I'm going Auburn outright. I cannot wait to see how Jackson Arnold handles going back to Norman. Now, you're right. He has a pretty experienced offensive line, and he has 2 elite receivers. Cam Coleman had a touchdown catch the other day. I feel like this would not surprise me if Oklahoma beat them by 2 touchdowns also. But, Freeze has won a bunch of big games in his time. I could see this playing out well. He'll have some kind of tricks up his sleeve, and I'm going to go outright. I'm going to say Auburn not just gets the 6.5. I'm going to say they win outright.
I like it. I like you being bold. I'm going the opposite direction. I think you're both underselling John Mateer. He is looking like a possible Heisman caliber guy. And also, Brent Venables, they're going to be very good on defense, right? I do think Auburn's a lot better. I think Jackson Arnold's a big improvement over what they had. But they're not going to, Auburn's not going to be able to run all over them. So I will take the Sooners to cover. So we have a split opinion there. And let's do this lightning speed here. Florida at Miami, 7.5. Can't imagine any of us are picking Florida to win, but do any of us have Florida covering?
No.
I do not. I think Miami's going to run through them. It just, and maybe I almost hate doing that because it seems like this should be Florida's last stand, right? This should be, all right, we've had a couple of bad weeks, but boy, we hate Miami and we're going to bow up here and show you what we're worth. I mean, the Gators played nice defense last week against LSU. And if they just, again, not turn it over 5 times, but I think this is more an endorsement of Miami. I just, the more I'm watching Miami, the more I'm thinking that could be an elite team.
I think Florida does have a good defense. I think it's not like USF ran all over them. So, but DJ Lagway is just not looking like he was supposed to. I will take Miami to cover. And then our upset picks, these are teams that, if we're picking them to win, not just cover. I will start with you, Bruce.
I am going to go in the Big Ten, and I'm going to get the Maryland Terrapins going a touchdown underdog against Wisconsin. Malik Washington's been a really impressive freshman quarterback, very talented. Got a pretty good group of receivers, as Maryland seems to always have. I am not it's a wait and see a little bit on because the competition hasn't been great, but I like what I've seen from the young quarterback, and Wisconsin hasn't been very impressive, so why not?
How can anybody be a touchdown underdog to Wisconsin at this point? That would not speak well for Maryland. Ralph, your upset pick.
Right. And I know we touched briefly on Wisconsin earlier, but if they lose to Maryland, oh boy, at home, oh boy. After nailing Vanderbilt over South Carolina last week, I am going back down south with Memphis, pulling the upset on Arkansas. Memphis's defense and Memphis has not historically played very good defense. We mentioned Ryan Silverfield. That defense looks pretty good. Listen, it was only Troy, but I got a chance to watch them a bunch against Troy. They were locking it down. You got a quarterback now in Brandon Lewis, right? Bruce?
Brendan Lewis.
Brendan Lewis, who transfer, who
started
can run a little
Colorado,
bit.
bounced around
Colorado
to Nevada,
transfer.
Well-traveled.
Yeah, can run a little bit now. I'll take Memphis to shock the Hogs, who are not playing good defense at all. Now, again, they're going to have to score a bunch of points to keep up with Taylor Green, but I'll take Memphis.
Quick thing, Wisconsin is actually a 7.5 point favorite, not a 6.5 point favorite, but I'm sure your pick stands from before. I'm going Rutgers 2.5 point dog at home against Iowa. I don't have a great X's and O's reason for that. I just think it's one of the, you talked about it earlier, the what are we doing here games. Iowa had one of those last year at UCLA, right? Just like inexcusable loss. This could be this one at Rutgers. So, Ralph, you've seen some Iowa Rutgers games in your time, I know. Give me the Scarlet Knights.
I was there in person a couple of years ago, and this goes under another make Ralph tell this story again. But that was a very eventful night in a press box. That's why I remember it. Yeah.
You saved a life that night. That was it, right?
Yeah. I had to perform CPR on a fellow sports writer who is now alive and well and living a very happy life, who had a heart attack that night in the press box. That was a little scary, but it all turned out great in the end. And that was quite a night in Piscataway.
I will say this, of any of the people who are my co-hosts on this podcast, I would much more expect you to be the lifesaver than Stu.
I think I would be very good at calling 911 is what I would do. By the way, what does it say about me that I obviously remember that happened and that story? Why do I remember who Rutgers was playing that night when that happened? That's all for our show today. We will be back on Thursday. That's the episode where we answer your mailbag questions, so be sure to send yours to theaudible.pod@gmail.com. And remember to watch us on YouTube. It's at Audible Show. Join us there Sunday mornings, 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, for a live breakdown of this weekend's games. See you next time.